Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Wednesday, October 11th. This is attempt number 2 as I think the power flickered in my house and reboot my computer, and either that or Windows Update happened and it screwed up all my audio, which with OBS, the way OBS is set up and the way my audio is set up, it's not good. It's very fragile, way more fragile than it should be. It really does make a lot of sense to spend a ton of extra money to move all of your audio into something like the Rodecaster Pro. That way you can have a much more simpler setup, but honestly I don't know if it actually would be any more simple if you had an external audio interface anyways, but there might be a more consistent setup at least in that case. It may be just as complicated, if not more complicated, which it's already too complicated, but it could be consistent and not screw up every time Windows updates something or OBS changes the settings, even though the settings haven't been changed. I guess that's the problem of using cutting-edge technology, or even trying to. There's a massive amount of notifications after this update here on Yu-Gi-Oh! It looks like almost everything here has been... for a second there I thought almost every notification had been reset, but no, it really is just a ton of announcements. So, following prices for gym packs will be implemented based on recent exchange rate trends to compensate for the exchange rate influences. So on November 8th, US dollars and whatever CNY is will be affected. However, it's not telling you exactly if the prices are changing higher or lower. For actual price, please check the price at the time of purchase. This might be China yen, it might be Canadian, no. Wouldn't be Canadian, could be lots of things. Then you have a much more normal notification about a Duelist Cup. Then we have a gem sale. So they're going to put gems on sale and then change the currency. The problem with them changing the currency is that either they raise the currency and nobody buys it, or they lower the currency and nobody buys it. There's still really not a good balance in this game at all to make you want to buy new secret pack. Yeah, there's just not a good reason to buy gems, because the amount of gems you'd need to buy to really whale it up and have all the cards is probably $600 to $1,000, and maybe you would need to do that multiple times a year. It's just way too high for most people, and when they make games that are really just targeting a few hundred people at most who are spending most of the money, once those few hundred people get bored and leave, then your game falls apart. Which, yeah, right now the idea of putting in a small amount of money just doesn't work. I'd like to see a game, even in modern inflation rates, where you put in maybe $10 a month and then they limit you to spending $1 a day. So $30 a month, $1 a day, yeah, type limitation, and that you really were having card packs, particularly for Yu-Gi-Oh! Since there's so many cards that are going to be garbage cards anyways. You would be opening card packs for a nickel, a dime, something like that, or even $1. Yeah. So a new card has been added to Insect Metamorphosis, and that seems to be the only real updates we're seeing. Rewarded. Regarding the changes of the description of Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon, the following text has been changed. A beautiful gallant dragon whose eyes gleam in two colors. When the swaying dimensions converge to create a miracle, it will appear. I wonder if this is a significant change from what it said, or if there was just a typo in the English translation. But yeah, that's a lot of updates, certainly, and this is the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! 2, is that they pop up all these updates at the beginning, and there's just no reason for it to pop up even once per day. Like they really need to have a second tier of notifications that just show up here if you want to read it, and then for most people they should just not bother to say anything at all, because most people aren't going to care. It's way more important to say put people into the shop and have them see that there's new shops stuff. For instance, we've got a new field, and good thing we saved our gems and then go crazy buying things. And we've got a new card protector. Undoubtedly, it also sucks really bad that the vast majority of the stuff you buy in the store, or you can buy in the store at least, is this nonsense accessory stuff that just doesn't work. Yeah. If anything, this feels like Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is trying to sell you on what would be physical purchases in a GameStop, card boxes with custom art and play mats and models and figures and things, and it's all so ridiculous when they really should just be focusing on the cards themselves. So we have a free pool because this is a new card pack, and then we'll probably want to buy another 10 packs, not 10 packs, but 10 packs to try and get all of the cards. Meanwhile, this is going to throw us keys to other secret packs, which probably won't matter too much. So let's look at featured cards. Let's look what we have. I mean, you're not even really in a great situation here to want to buy a 10 pack. There's several cards here that are normals and rares that we're missing, so. But you already have a decent number of ultra rares and super rares. Well, I guess that's what's going to happen too, is that we're going to run into a situation where the extra secret packs are going to start overlapping, and so the ultra rares, super rares are going to be attainable by 3 or 4 different types of secret packs, and so you're going to have better options, better paths to potentially fill out your super rare and ultra rare collection, while also filling out your normals and rares collection easier. Of course, the number one change that needs to happen on Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that you need to be able to convert like normal crafting points into rare crafting points, and they just have not bothered to want to do that. Now in this pool too, and I think I'm gonna just skip the rest of this because this is just gonna take too long, and frankly it's a waste of time to show off all of this. I don't even like the animation here. I still think Hearthstone had the best feedback on all of that. by far. So yeah, we didn't get an ultra rare at all. So now we're guaranteed an ultra rare, so now we have to spend another 1,000 gems. Then this is guaranteed ultra rare, ultra rare, ultra rare, so that's a pretty good deal there. To get 5 ultra rares. Got lucky there. Okay. But with that, I imagine now it would be diminished return severely to seek out 3 copies of all of these super rares or 3 copies of all the ultra rares. Meanwhile, with the exception of this card, we have at least 3 copies of all the normals, as far as I can tell, and at least 3 copies of all the rares, which makes this secret pack, like most of the other secret packs, now just not really viable to engage with. Whereas these other secret packs aren't new, although I don't recall seeing Guardians of Kings. So I would have to have some extra card packs. This is a decent candidate to go with, but I just don't have enough gems, actually. And there does seem like there's an increased overlap. This one looks like a decent candidate too. Just in the number of secret packs that we unlocked by opening that one new secret pack. Even if I was to look at one of these though and see that it was completely empty, like I'd never even unlocked any of those cards, I still would be in a very poor position to try to open 20 packs. That's all I could really afford. And it makes a lot of sense to wait and always have a little bit of gems in return. And this is inherently the system that should be pushing players like me to want to at least purchase gems. But no, that's not really the case. Like, nothing here makes me really want to purchase gems more. We'll leave those for next time. And let's see. As far as packs go, was this what we had just opened, or nope? So this is where we should focus more on. So we should open these up, but we have 54 days to deal with that. Whereas this pack is less of a candidate, and it only has 28 days. And this pack, I mean, this one's actually a pretty good argument to buy. And this one only has 18 days. So let's just push it. Let's just hope we get one ultra rare here. And that this really helps us get further. And these packs are better because all of these cards are from that selection. So then we've got one more secret pack unlocked, which isn't really much of a candidate. And then we go back to this normal pack and see how well we did with buying a 10 pack there. Still not really doing great on that. So, do I want to push it again? No. Like, I need to have at least 1,000. And then this, I swear we already opened this one, but even if we didn't, it's not really a good candidate. So I think that's everything in the shop, even though there's still an exclamation point somewhere around here. Oh, no, you're gone. But yeah, nothing really pushing me here to want to spend $10, which is really all they want me to spend per month. Well, $60 at most. And then this. So 99 cents at the moment is going to get you 67 gems, and then $64.99 is going to get you about 5,000 gems. So we'll see what the price changes do to that later. But nothing brings you to that screen other than clicking on the button and trying to actually purchase gems. Which I wouldn't be surprised if a decent amount of people don't even know that that's how you even purchase gems. So we bought a ton of cards there, and all it really did was give me 615 normal crafting points and 580 rare crafting points, 10 super rare crafting points, which then just makes an argument to spend some extra time at some point trying to craft more normal cards, which, you know, I have been sitting around doing very little work in the past couple of days. Then we can jump into the accountability section there. This duel event is not here yet, which is fine. I guess we'll just focus on getting to platinum. But yeah, yesterday and today technically are Amazon's. It's not really labeled as a Prime Day sale anymore. It's called the big savings sale or something like that. Big discount sale, something like that. So they've gotten away from just calling it Prime Day. But it is just an excuse to have things on sale. They're really doing nothing for it. They're not putting any real big push to it. There's no giveaways. There's no earn store credit or win or anything like that. There's just lightning deals for a bunch of very practical things, and that's my experience in a nutshell. Is some very boring adult practical purchases. Laundry soap was on sale, and like shoes and things like that. This is your standard Chinese good social credit score purchases going on sale. No, not a lot of Nintendo Switch games or video games in general, or toys or anything that you even might have on sale, because we're getting close to Christmas. And yeah, there's perhaps small selections of like smart home devices and gadgets that will interest me and probably nobody else. But even at that, they tend not to be the products that I really would want. Instead, they tend to be the more expensive to start with products, being discounted just a little bit, but still being more expensive. For instance, Govee Smart Lighting is a great example of that, and maybe Govee has better quality. I'm not sure about that, but it starts off high. So if a Govee Smart Lighting, Smart LED set of some sort is on sale, it very possibly is not much of a sale, because it's still going to be more expensive than a no-name Chinese brand that you're going to take your risks on. yeah. I bought like quite a lot of items if you go by numbers. 21 items I think was what I bought, but very few of them were, again, fun things, and very little of it felt like it was very cheap. So like it increasingly to me these days feels like everything is just at minimum going to cost $10. So I am definitely from a point where I remember that things were sold for $1.50. I can remember when gasoline was below $1, for instance. Yeah, that may be a real long time ago, but you start to feel like inflation really has just shot up quite a bit. I don't think I played that right, but whatever. I think it might work. So, yeah. Not particularly satisfied with the savings and the sales there. Although, the truth of it is, if you're buying practical things, if you're buying laundry soap, and you are going to buy laundry soap in the next 6 months, like, you are saving there. You're only not saving when you're buying things that you weren't planning on buying before. That's why the best way, if you're going to engage with Amazon sales at all, is to have things in your shopping cart and then see what items in your shopping cart are potentially discounted. Then look at each individual item and compare it to other things that would be almost exactly the same from each individual's page that might be on a lightning sale or big prime big deal sale, which that did work for me. Also sharing, there's a Android plugin called Try Camel that shares the links from Amazon.com's app to Camel. I did notice that a significant number of pages were missing information as far as Camel. So I think Amazon is probably trying to stop price tracking from happening on Camel. But yeah, that lets you know if something really is on sale or if it's been jacked up in price. And I definitely saw things that were jacked up in price quite a bit just to go on sale for the big deal sale. But for the most part, it is not worth your effort to look at the front page of Amazon or the lightning deal sales of Amazon. Maybe if you just bought a house, if you just moved out of your parents, if you're somehow flush with cash and can't need to buy things for the first time, maybe then. If this is the first time you've ever bought a set of towels, if this is the first time you've ever bought a set of dishes or cookware, things like that. But inherently, and maybe this isn't being as common as it once was, that there was this whole scam that is built around marriage and marriage gifts, in that you get married to somebody and then you get a bunch of usually older friends and family to buy you your first set of towels, cookware, things like that. Which, yeah. So you're not even investing in that. Like, there definitely were decades where the first vacuum cleaner anybody would have would have been a marriage gift. Of course, now in modern days, I wouldn't be surprised if most wedding registries still are full of sillier things that are less practical. And I would say there's probably never been a good return on gifting marriage gifts. If you buy somebody a vacuum cleaner, they're probably not going to remember that you bought it for them. And part of that scam certainly too is just how expensive everything is, and it also highlights how incredibly unfair the system, the Western world system is, and societies in general tend to be against single people who are unlikely to breed new warriors to end up in the military in the next generation if necessary. Yeah, sad, lonely incels don't get to throw a marriage for themselves alone and expect gifts. Or childless families don't get to at least have the baby showers, at which point a ton of more gifts are given to families. Arguably, we should actually ticket people having baby showers. Just, here's a fine for bringing in something that's going to be a burden on society for the next 13 years, and we're gonna have to fund public schooling for, and yeah. But yeah, they certainly don't go that direction with it. Probably rambling here. As far as Prime Day sales, I bought some LED neon tube lights that are stringier, or more like noodles. That's what Adafruit calls them, is noodle lights, because they're kind of like a spaghetti noodle. They're encoded in plastic and more flexible, and so they inherently kind of have a diffuser built into them and a bracket system built into them, and when you have all of that added together, they can be cheaper, they can be better looking. They have a tendency to be dim, so that the real risk here is that it just won't be bright enough to illuminate as much as it is just accent lighting for like a dark room on the back of a TV, or under the counter lighting if you have other lights also lighting up a room. There was another option where there's, I think they're called CID lights, but maybe not, where the LEDs are one long continuous strip, but they tend to only be white and yellow in that case, and they're not individually addressable color changing, although in a lot of cases you probably are better off not having individually addressable color changing LEDs. I got an on-air light that I'm going to try to put an ESP32 circuit chip I've had on, effectively abandoning an old project that wasn't going anywhere anyways. I was just not putting the time into it, and I just am not motivated to continue on there. And then I did pull the trigger and have ChatGPT just write the code for me to begin with, although it only wrote about half the code and then said I don't know how to do the other half of this code as far as WebSockets with OBS. So you're gonna have to write that code yourself. But the trick there is that gets me started and gets it potentially done fairly quickly. So I'm gonna see if I can finish the code, make sure the code actually works, because that is also a big chance with OBS. And then connect this ESP32 device somewhere in the circuitry. I hope I can connect it in the circuitry with the on-air light. Ideally, I'll be able to just tap into the middle of the power switch, and so when it's turned on, the power switch will be able to send the same voltages. The only real problem there is maybe 3-volt logic instead of 5-volt logic. Now, unfortunately, I guess I prematurely started here, so I'm gonna have to already run to the bathroom. So let's go ahead and start this, and then I'll pause the recording. Okay, I'm back. So yeah, once again we're running into a problem of just, I basically have to go to the bathroom, force myself to go to the bathroom before streaming. Always. I need to do that, and that's just not something ideally like I prefer to do, but otherwise you're always going to have these bathroom breaks. And if I had, say, a producer, assistant, somebody else working with me, I'd have them jump on the stream and take over, but also that feels me, and probably any creative person, on-air talent type person, with some great fear that if I did have someone jump on and replace me, then they would potentially be better than me, and then eventually just permanently replace me. Which, yeah. I don't know if I inherently want to be on-air talent, though. If, as a YouTuber, I could easily see my words and my footage that I make being re-cut down by somebody else. That wouldn't be long plays at that point, but if my YouTube channel somehow became super successful, I could see a case where I straight up hire somebody to be the abridged version of my ideas and thoughts, and do basically what Adam Sessler did a lot of times, and the Morgan Webb did on X-Play. Like, yes, Morgan Webb and Adam Sessler wrote some of the reviews for some of the video games, but Adam Sessler in particular was also just in the voice recording booth a lot of times, reading other people's reviews and just being the voice, the face of X-Play. Now, of course, in modern times, Adam Sessler has basically lost all of his fandom as being in any way respected amongst gamers, whereas at one point he was considered the peak of respect. He just became too old, became an okay boomer equivalent, I guess might be the best way to explain it. Became too opinionated on other things on Twitter and things like that. There's a YouTuber that I follow that had been doing a lot of voice editing. Overlord Gaming, I believe is the name of it. And so all of his videos had this very radio voice booming sound to it, and it feels like either somebody was putting a lot of effects on the original voice actor to make it sound completely different, or that it was that exact scenario where somebody was being the voice actor and another person was doing the writing, and apparently they've lost either the sound editor or the voice actor, and so now they're just changing their channel completely after being somewhat successful. So now it's going to just sound like the actual person, which inherently I think that highlights the value in just being true to yourself and probably not hiring a voice person. So if I was going to do that, if I won the YouTube lottery and was very successful and was going to hire somebody to be the abridged version of me and take what I say in and cut it down and do a massive amount of editing, I would have to also say that person needs to be their own personality, and they need to throw a little bit of their own opinions in it as far as how they're editing it down, and be fairly transparent to say this is what Rydo said, not that that this new person would replace Rydo. Of course, I say be true to myself while still only referring to myself as a stage name. But yeah, I think there's room for that kind of idea in general. It's better than just being a reaction YouTuber or somebody that reacts specifically to only one or two people. In my opinion. As far as the other things I bought on Amazon Prime Day, I spent a lot of money to just come back and say I barely remember what I even bought. But I don't think any of it is that interesting. I got a 3-in-1 air filter, humidifier, and dehumidifier, and I can't even remember if it's actually a smart device or not. Although it won't really matter because it has its own sensor built in. So if it isn't connected to the Tuya Smart Life infrastructure, that's probably fine, because it's not like there's a lot of Tuya sensors out there that can sense humidity to turn on a humidifier somewhere else in the house, which is probably about the only thing it would be valuable for. Whereas I know it has its own sensor where you can just say at 50% humidity start dehumidifying, and at 40% humidity start humidifying, or something like that. So I guess that means we're gonna go into the news fairly quickly today, which is probably fine. Anyways, I did work a little bit on the YouTube Shorts, adding a black pixel on the left and right of the video on YouTube Shorts. That way, hopefully YouTube will be able to make more of a border around it. Okay, I was hoping I could do something there, but I guess not. And yeah, made some minor tweaks on my macros and things. I'm spending a lot of time and effort on all of that. Let's go ahead. Just jump the gun a little bit. For the most part, though, I would say I've been not very productive in the past 4 or 5 days. Setting up for the Prime Day sale, which took a day. Honestly, spent very little time on it compared to previous sales, but so I am getting better as far as not wasting a bunch of time on there, but not really doing much else. Still playing on my cell phone with all of the multitude of different games, which there isn't much of a change there. If anything, I'm just getting into the games more and sticking to them more. But it is still a weird situation where 3 of the games really do run out of stamina too much. So you're not getting good gaming sessions, I would say, where you could play for an hour or 2 on one specific game. You're getting these 20-minute experiences, then come back in a couple hours for another 20-minute experience. And inherently that may just be a problem with mobile games in general, is that they are designed to be played in short bursts while in a car, while waiting somewhere. Well, they're not designed for the what I jokingly refer to as button seat economics of real video game console gaming. The joke there being that you are investing time by having your butt in a seat or in a couch. I also watched the first few episodes that are available of that Amazon Prime show Gen 5, which there is definitely a ton of violence and blood in The Boys, and Gen 5 is a spin-off of The Boys, but there's a lot more sex and a little less violence in Gen 5, which is weird because these are kids in college, so they're of age, but they're having sex like crazy, and they're having they're doing drugs, and some of that has, I think, surpassed the point of being a commentary that these superheroes are effectively just hypocrites that pretend to be good on the outside, but in reality are fairly corrupt. It's become less of commentary and more just a way of getting softcore porn into your episodes, and it feels a little weird with college kids, you know. At a certain level, it also does just make an argument that maybe they should just have softcore porn on Amazon Prime if that's what's selling, and just be honest about it instead of pushing to the extreme limits of good taste. I hate to use the word decency or good taste at all, but yeah, I'm not really making an argument for censorship. I'm just saying that there is a story in The Boys in Gen 5 that is going to be missed by a percentage of the audience because it's wrapped in too much extremes. It's not palatable to a certain audience. Also watched a new movie. I can't even tell you what the name of it was, where it's a teenager that goes back to the 80s to stop a serial killer from killing her mother's friends. Which, it's an interesting twist on, hey, we want to make an 80s slasher movie, but let's parody that and instead have somebody from 2023 who's been trained in self-defense and spent her entire life effectively trained to avoid serial killers because her mother's friends were killed by a serial killer. And the girl from 2023 making commentary about people smoking and then not knowing about DNA, or how there's just like no security at all in any of the record keeping or anything like that. And it's a, I imagine it would be an interesting second watch on just the decisions of what scenes they chose to shoot and put on the film and what scenes they didn't choose to shoot or they left on the cutting room floor, because there's definitely other commentary that could have been made that wasn't, and particularly at the end you have this whole recap situation in which they show you fairly important information for you to learn or be revealed, and they do it with just big walls of text at the end. And I'd say it feels like that's the point where they potentially ran out of steam, because it definitely would have been helpful to have a few more scenes or a montage scene showing what's going on, or a voiceover scene explaining what's going on, instead of just putting text on the screen. Yep. Which, in all fairness, that's, I think, the end of Revenge of the Nerds, or one of those in these movies too. It's a pretty common trope, actually, to say, hey, we ran out of steam, but we need to explain what happened to these people, what they grew up to be, things like that. And the movie is kind of interesting in that it's not particularly it's lying to you basically by selling itself as a horror 80s slasher, because very few people actually get killed, and all of them are fighting back way more than you would think. Which that is an interesting twist on the trope, certainly, is could you make a oops, I almost ran out of time there. Could you make a movie where a serial killer tries to kill a bunch of people and gets thwarted in every single attempt and doesn't actually kill anybody at all? That sucks. Yeah, I don't think I can win here. But the fact that I can't remember the name of the movie, is weird. I wouldn't say it really means too much, though. I've also been watching a lot of Solar Opposites. But yeah, I've been watching that for about a week, and I'm almost done through 4 seasons. And boy, is that a weird cartoon animated Rick and Morty kind of ripoff, I think, from the same people, or at least one of the same persons from Rick and Morty. The problem with Solar Opposites, I think, is mostly that they just wrote a premise that they were not interested in. I won't say it's a bad premise. I wouldn't say it's a premise that fails on the face of it, but they're not interested in it, so that they're actually doing something amazing in that they've got a premise of 4 aliens and the pet of alien, effectively, being stuck on Earth, and they, even from the very first episode, aren't really that interested in that premise. It's been done before with Coneheads. I think it's probably been done better with something like Alf, where it's just one alien living amongst humans in the same household. But even the humans in Solar Opposites don't really act like humans, and so there's no real grounding in reality there to help it. And as soon as they introduce the concept of the wall, you really start to see that they're way more interested in that premise and telling those stories than the Solar Opposites. The concept of the wall is that one of the aliens gets angry at people for being jerks, shrinks them down, and puts them into this giant wall of many levels. It's basically if you had a huge aquarium and then it starts to follow multiple stories of the wall and people being put in the wall and creating a society in the wall and creating different societies, and then all of a sudden you have these weird deep philosophical episodes as far as how should a society be created and how would a society develop if started over, if living in this tiny walled version of the world. But yeah, that they basically got to the point where half of the entire seasons are episodes about the people in the wall that have nothing to do with the solar opposites aliens anyways. And yeah, on a certain level I almost understand it, that they potentially, Dan Harmon in particular, wanted to make the serious stories be completely disconnected from the silly stories, which Rick and Morty has that problem of the silly stories and the serious stories integrating into the same episode and often into the same A plot, and not even a silly B plot and an A plot. I don't think actually that's a bad thing though. Like, honestly, I think Rick and Morty is way better than that because of that. But yeah, I just don't really feel like they did a particularly great job with solar opposites. Perhaps it's because each of the four aliens really only has one gimmick in their personality anyways. And so you have like an angry teenage boy, a what would you call her? Slightly ignorant, youthful teenage girl, and then you have an idiotic wife, lazy wife, and then you have an overbearing workaholic husband, even though they really don't have genders. But yeah, each of those four characters really just has a stereotype and as their character personality. In the 3 seasons, there's really not been any hint or effort to give them any more backstory or anything like that. Whereas if you think about Morty and Rick and Morty, that is technically to start with an angry teenage boy, but his character has developed and grown quite a bit throughout the experiences of Rick and Morty. And Rick obviously has a huge amount of character to his character and backstory to his character, and then the teenage sister in Rick and Morty has got a decent amount of characterization to her, although not as much as Summer probably should have. And then the husband and the wife characters have tons of backstories and entire episodes to even give their characters more backstories. It honestly is probably a good ground for comparison, and as far as watching Solar Opposites in parallel to Rick and Morty, just to see what is being missed here. Why is Rick and Morty so much better? Is Solar Opposites just a collection of Hulu episodes of Rick and Morty that didn't make the cut? Even if that is the case, Rick and Morty would probably do better if it did have some middle of the road average episodes instead of every episode being so uniquely attempting to be great. Like a bad Rick and Morty episode is a big problem because they don't make that many per season. So yeah, suffice it to say, I'm supposed to be talking about video games here, and instead I'm talking about Solar Opposites on Hulu, which points out that I am, for this accountability section, really just admitting to myself I'm spending too much time watching TV, too much time sitting around, not playing a video game. I did install several new video games, so I do need to I need to pick a game and just start playing it. And if I don't have an idea, I should just jump into something long and not that interesting. Like Borderlands pre-sequel might be a good candidate, or probably pick quite a few things if I was to just think it all through. See if we can win this turn. Okay, that didn't do anything. I guess the question is, why could I not summon? Weird. Yeah, I thought I would have been able to just summon that. Interesting, why can I not activate this ability? I actually have a decent amount of video game news to talk about today too, so I really should jump into the news. Arguably, maybe I shouldn't have the whole warm-up accountability section at the beginning anyways, but yeah, I think it probably helps me a little bit to not immediately try and should I like not immediately try and start talking about the news, because I just won't be awake enough, warmed up enough, one way or the other. So, Deep Silver has a Dead Island 2 update called House, H-A-U-S, and in it you can see there's this lady in this white leotard jumpsuit that's torn with something over her eyes. She may very well be a zombie. It doesn't look like she's really tied up or anything, though. Seems like this is a fashion decision, not a bondage thing. It doesn't really give you a lot of information as to what the update really will be. In Dead Island 2, easily confused with Dying Light 2, which is a different game, and that's definitely what I was thinking when I saw this announcement originally. GameDeveloper.com has this article. Steam developers will need SMS verification to release game builds. Developers will have to register a phone number by October 24th if they ever want to update their games or add new users to their Steamworks account. Interesting. A good bit of two-factor authentication, enforcing it is not a bad thing in almost every scenario. And forcing it to be a cell phone number does add a layer of complexity, if not really reducing the security. But yeah, having game developers have to put out some information they may not be comfortable putting out usually will prevent a lot of, I imagine, garbage asset flippers from doing what they do and flooding Steam with garbage games by some small percentage. I imagine most people are shameless or know enough tricks to create a fake cell phone number anyways. Then GameDeveloper.com is being silly, just connecting to a completely unrelated article saying earlier this year the ESRB proposed to the FTC to use facial recognition known as the privacy protective facial age estimation, which has nothing to do with Steam Steam requiring devs to have an SMS, like two-factor authentication. It's still very easy to get around that thing. Like, fairly easy to have a cell phone number under a fake account, to have a burner account, particularly if you're talking about what's going on outside of, like, the United States. It might be a little bit more difficult inside the United States. A untraceable, untrackable cell phone number. At a certain level too, it is just not really going to be much of a burden for most people to add security that most devs really should have, because if you are even an asset flipper, you're probably still trying to get paid, so you already have gone through the process of figuring out some way to get money from it, which means giving out some kind of details. So if you already have a fake bank account, you probably already had a fake phone number, which I bet that doesn't really happen that often on Steam, that somebody actually has a fake bank account or fake phone numbers. Anyways, this really is just stopping people from pretending to be a Steam developer and hacking into Steam developer accounts, which noticeably I actually haven't ever heard of a story like that I can recall. Anyway, so Steam is just adding security to stay standard with the times. Fans are angry for a couple of reasons today, but the first one is that Rocket League is going to remove player-to-player trading. The fans will let Rocket League vehicles come to other Epic games over time, is the quote here, but yeah. It's yet another story of you can't take anything away. And I would say Rocket League feels like it's probably evolved quite a bit in the long time that it's existed. But I don't think that up till this point they've actually taken everything out. I believe it might be a case that the Rocket League company is owned by Epic Games, so this is potentially somebody else's fault other than Psyonix's, but we might as well blame Psyonix first and foremost. But yeah, I think that's a very legitimate thing for people to complain about, that there was a feature for players to trade things, and that feature is being removed. I will preemptively say no, I do not believe this is an example of bullying by gamers or by a review bomb or anything like that. I had to think of the phrase. One of the game companies retweeted this guy being accepted into the Twitch partner program, not to be confused with the easier to get into Twitch affiliate program, where the Twitch partner program I think is pretty much a by invitation only. He's been streaming on Twitch for 3 years, and I imagine this artwork with the Harry Potter characters all in purple for Twitch is not part of this and something custom made. And then you can see here, congratulations, you're invited to the Twitch partner program. What I get mostly from this, though, is this is the first time I've heard of anybody being invited into the Twitch partner program, or anybody even big being going to Twitch in years. Yeah, as much as people hate YouTube, there's not a big shift happening there. And that's 100% I would say Twitch's fault. They've just not made a good platform or made good offers to big content creators to justify people moving over to Twitch. There definitely were early days when it felt like they could have done that, but their decisions have been poor at best, or non-existent in most cases. Let's see. See what happens if we activate this. Video Games Chronicle says that Bobby Kotick has hinted again that Guitar Hero may return. He previously has said that AI tech could lead to the series revival. I don't know how AI tech would particularly make it any cheaper to have or maintain the licenses of famous songs for Guitar Hero, which is the big deal. Certainly there in my mind, that's the big deal, is that they just would have to continuously renegotiate these licenses, and it would just be too expensive. It does bring about a question that maybe, this is highly unlikely to be the case, but maybe Activision Blizzard has some kind of exclusive contracts to some of the heavy metal songs that are in Brutal Legend. So if Microsoft acquires Activision Blizzard, maybe then they could bring out Brutal Legend remastered or remake. This is highly unlikely to be the case, but it would be weird if that turned out to be the case. I could see Double Fine being kind of happy, or at least the CEO of Double Fine, the guy in charge of Double Fine, being kind of happy to potentially take over Rock Band and make a new version of it. I think there is a much tighter argument against like AI and copyright infringement in general if you're going to have a game playing the entirety of songs, or having let the player play the entirety of songs, where the notes are going to be programmed into the game and the rhythms and the words. If you maybe made a rock band game that made entirely new music based on parodies or stealing via AI other songs, and you didn't have to do any licenses at all, that would potentially work, but almost certainly somebody is going to claim that you stole their work. Like I just don't see it happening that they're going to be, that you wouldn't get sued regardless. I don't think I summoned the character correctly. There. Not sure that Rock Band is going to particularly succeed too well either, in that as a couple generations, a couple decades have passed, a lot of these characters are just not that recognizable or relevant. Like I know these genuine silhouettes, but I honestly would have to guess that maybe this is Dee Snider. This is, I guess, supposed to be one of the Kiss characters, but I couldn't tell you, like, who. And this lady, I have no idea who this lady is supposed to be. Like, as far as a female guitarist. Weirdly, I'd also say it feels like none of these characters are actually holding the guitar in a close to correct way. This guy may be somewhat close to the correct way, but both of the others really doing stage performance holds of a guitar instead of actually playing. But in modern times, I think that heavy metal and rock in general are just not that popular, and we're you would do better to have a game based off of some of those newer characters which those songs are maybe not acceptable. The rock songs wouldn't have been considered acceptable for kids too, and it really should be a kids game anyways. So on one hand, you probably should have like the Baby Shark people making a rock band, but if you really want to make it edgy, you would get the like WAP singer, and Lizzo, I guess, is one of them too. I'm really throwing out names out of the air, like, but yeah, you're gonna get pop singers and rappers and things like that. I don't even know of anybody that's big and new to rock in the past 4 or 5 years anyways. Of course, I don't really listen to music. That's probably why I sometimes accomplish a little bit more than the average person is, and I'm not spending even 20 minutes a day listening to music. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com or Gamatsu, I think this is Gamatsu. Windjammers 2 is getting a major free update that's now available, adding new characters, modes, online lobbies, and crossplay. It is questionable to me, though, whether Windjammers was ever that important of a game, or if it was just a game that was talked about on the Giant Bomb cast back when I was listening to the Giant Bomb cast a lot more. It probably isn't that relevant or popular. New Switch system updates have improved stability, and they've updated the banned word list. It'd be interesting to see the banned word list, but I bet they don't actually give you a list, and they just tell you what it is. There's still rumors of the next Nintendo console, which most people are calling the Switch 2. We haven't seen any announcements for it, and there really isn't any reason why you would see announcements for it before, say, January, if not later, much later. Insomniac Games put out this thing an hour ago. In honor of National Coming Out Day, we aspire to inspire our players through gameplay. We seek to tell stories to reflect our players' humanity. So, leaving it at that, that seems fine. Standing with LGBTQIA community is fine. The problem here that's happening, and this has always been an accusation from people who are anti-LGBTQ or anti any progressive stance, but particularly LGBTQIA and the organization that seems to be too good at promoting them, is that there are just too many days. Like, there's way too many days per year, way too many events, way too many occasions when armchair activists such as Insomniac can put out these posts on Twitter. They do say they are donating, ... here, and then a link to insom.games donate. Yeah. Doesn't say that they are specifically donating anything here, though. So they may very well just be putting out a tweet and not. This is weird. Yeah, I guess it stopped originally at we are donating ... to Outright International to support this cause. So they are donating some, but they're not saying how much, which means it's less than $10,000 almost certainly. In the United States, Monday was either Christopher Columbus Day or National Indigenous Peoples Day, which the more progressive step certainly there is to focus on National Indigenous People, not Christopher Columbus, who, from what I hear, was considered a jerk even by his own time and that time frame and his own actions. And frankly, generally celebrating an entire group of people versus one person is a smarter move. Always, anyways. So, in the Insomniac Games focus, or myopic focus, I'm going to start using that phrase, I think, more often, myopic, in their single-mindedness around LGBTQIA plus things, they have effectively slighted and ignored Indigenous people or Christopher Columbus or celebrating anything else at all. And it just comes off as a little bit single-minded, particularly for a video game company that really should be saying nothing other than talking about video games in the first place and should be focused exclusively on that. And this is also another case where they're not even getting a lot of support from other people on Twitter that I'm seeing, so they're really standing out more than they probably should. me up here. Probably should stop playing after this game because I'm not moving very fast today. This isn't video game related, but I noticed that both McDonald's is bringing back the plastic trick-or-treat buckets that they gave away in like the 80s, I think, maybe even the 70s or earlier. And Burger King is coming out with their own version of that to compete. And I remember, I definitely saw those around when I was a kid and probably had one or two of them, but I'm really having a hard time remembering if it was anything of any real value to me. I think we probably just threw crayons in it, and it was just a crayon bucket or a junk bucket for kids' toys. And we really didn't care too much about it. Although, it seems like people do have nostalgic for them. Well, nostalgia for them. But I'm not sure it isn't just a manufactured nostalgia for McDonald's. If anything, McDonald's was kind of a non-stop place where you could see new toys coming out and being advertised. Cheap garbage toys. A lot of weird toys, but toys nonetheless, something. And having a crayon bucket when you're young probably still exists these days, but I wouldn't be surprised if kids get bored of crayons and drawing a lot earlier nowadays than they may have in the 80s with just so many other digital screens around. Mineko's Night Market put out this wall of text apologizing for any negative experiences they've had. They're working hard to patch the game, which, yeah, obviously they're not having as good of a launch on the Switch as they would have liked. But yeah, I'm bearing the lead. I feel like a lot of people have been mispronouncing his name. The Unity CEO and president, as far as I understand it, is his last name is pronounced Riccatello, but I'm saying I've heard people pronounce it Riccitelio or Riccatelio, but I think the second I here is just kind of silent, and it's Riccatello. Rick and the second C is silent, and the second I is so Riccitello. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. He's leaving Unity after the whole debacle. Now, inherently, maybe he's just leaving because it's a sinking ship. Maybe he's leaving because somebody needed to fall on their sword. I mean, he's not really been fired. I feel like it definitely was more of a case that the people in charge of Unity, the shareholders, were 100% behind the idea of they were behind the idea of the per install gimmick, and they were at least behind the idea of making money or money. So I don't have really any level of faith that with John Riccatello leaving, all of a sudden Unity is going to become this different company, better company, that they're going to somehow bring back the audience they have lost. At a certain level, it is John Riccatello's fault that couldn't run the business correctly. So this would be a justifiable firing if he actually was being fired instead of just gracefully stepping down himself and taking a golden parachute with him. There could be some maybe insider trading going on. That would be pure speculation on my part, but if all of a sudden Unity's valuation and share price has dropped a bunch, and then some other company acquired Unity, and then all of a sudden they hired John Riccitiello to be the new CEO of that new company, that wouldn't be as much insider trading as just some weird scheme. But yeah, that again is just tinfoil hat speculation on my part if that were to happen. But yeah, the thing to take from this is that he really did fail to be a good CEO in the fact that he didn't survey people, he didn't listen to those surveys, he didn't use the right kind of surveys that would actually tell you the truth as far as the way this plan and this scheme with the licenses would go. Looking at John Riccitiello here, you have a white-haired guy that is dressed fairly appropriately, and honestly, for professional photos, this is the way it should go always. I think just in an avoidance of sexism, you should have busts that always crop the above the neckline, really, and so you're not seeing cleavage, you're not seeing anything like that. I'd say this photo in general, though, could be zoomed out a little bit. It's a little too close to the top here, and there should be maybe just a little bit of dead space, and the perspective is a little weird too. You just don't need this much negative space either, but definitely I've seen a lot worse. Riccitiello has also been known to shoot off his mouth several times, so people were always kind of mad at him. So third strike and you're out more than likely should apply to him. So ideally we don't ever hear of John Riccitiello again. Unfortunately, the way the game industry works, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden he's working at some new video game company and it's just same old bad leadership from the top. And honestly, some of this could be blamed on, like, Riccitiello may have been at one point a hot shot programmer, and he may never really have been on the management track. He may have never gone to a college to be trained to be a manager, and that there just aren't really any quote-unquote adults running video game companies, which has been an accusation that seems often accurate for video game companies, but it doesn't really fix too much, because even in the case of other industries, most managers are still extremely childish and extremely unprofessional. The only slight difference is that if you went to Harvard, you have a bunch of other Harvard buddies and your same alma mater to cover for you, and you perhaps have been trained a little bit to keep your mouth shut. In other industries, horrible CEOs, like, we don't hear about the horrible CEO of, like, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. Those industries are full of terrible management, but they know how to keep quiet and not cause any big controversies. But in video games, people pay attention a lot more to the management structures, and so people have to really walk on eggshells as a manager in video games, movies, entertainment industries in particular. Moving on, Humble Bundle is going to set the Games Collection perk in November. The Humble Collection perk, a library of games previously made accessible for Humble Choice subscribers, will shut down on November 7th. This is on top of another Humble service, I believe, being shut down. So the Humble Bundle Games website seemingly not doing that well, which is no real surprise there. It's real hard to justify purchasing games through the Humble Game Store when the only reason anybody ever went to the Humble Game Store in the first place was because of the Humble Bundle charity donations, which those Humble Bundle charity donations ran out of steam once you couldn't give 100% to the charity, and once you weren't getting any kind of new games. It was just the same bundles over and over again with the same games over and over again. Which eventually that'll also happen with like free games on the Epic Games Store. Steam is about the only place that could give away free games and doesn't, where they could easily have a constant influx of new video games that they could consider giving away. That being said, if Steam did do that, they would more than likely be giving away games that most people either had or most people wouldn't want. Sony has unveiled a slim PlayStation 5 version with a detachable disc drive, and this definitely screams to me what they really wanted in the original design of the PlayStation 5. This very, here's a big word I love to use, Ionic art style, or vase-like art style. That's not what Ionic means, but whatever. Feels more appropriate when it's slimmed down like this instead of it being fairly wide and bloated. It's still really bursting out on some sides and trying to hide the actual width. It's still a terrible design if you want to put it on a shelf, particularly a small Japanese shelf next to a small Japanese TV. The problem here is that the disc drive is priced at $80 when it probably should be about $40, and they should probably be taking a loss on it. And they clearly are trying to push people into deciding to start off as digital only, and then if you really want to buy games, paying a premium. And there is a question here: if you're really saving that much by buying the discless version, knowing that you can plug in a drive, and inherently once it's detachable, why not just have it be a Thunderbolt USB 3.0 high-speed device? Yeah, maybe $80 gets you 4K UHD playback, but you can get a Blu-ray USB drive for about $50 as an end user on Amazon right now. I know, I looked just yesterday. So unless 4K UHD and certifications around like Dolby and things like that are doubling the price, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for it to be $80. And it really doesn't make a lot of sense for it to be detachable and reattachable. Inherently, if you buy the disc drive, you're going to attach it once and then that's it. You're never going to remove it again. But again, the PlayStation 5 really should be able to lie on its side flat, and it should be much squarer and boxier. But slimmer is better, I will say that much. Here you can get a better vision of what it is. Just a huge bump out here. Just an unnecessary bump out. There is room certainly for a USB 4K UHD drive to be intercompatible potentially for both a PlayStation and an Xbox Series X if they came out with something like that. And so you would buy one disc drive for two consoles, save a little bit of money there. Really doesn't feel like there's anything special about the disk drive. It's an Ultra HD Blu-ray disk drive. And apparently it's also including a 1 terabyte SSD for more internal storage, which I guess those two combined might be worth $80 at that point. Although it seems like it's odd that there'd be a separation there, or that those two things would be connected in any way. With the new PS5 model, the digital edition is getting also a $50 price increase, so they're overall just raising the price of the device. $50 for the option at some point to be able to upgrade it. It's also coming with the vertical stand, which was sold separately for $30, which that's also ridiculous. This stand looks like it's been changed to be different too. And that's the real footprint, is this circular stand. It doesn't matter really how thin the rest of it looks. It's maybe just being designed to have maybe a little bit better airflow, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is that much better airflow around it. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if at some point they got away from the liquid metal in the PlayStation 5, because liquid metal can be quite the mess. Apparently there is also a report that Disney execs are keen to acquire a publisher like EA. I cannot really believe this, because, well, I can kind of believe it because Disney doesn't know what it's doing, but I also can't really believe it because Disney has just a long proven history of not doing well with video game companies. So why would they want to go back into the video game industry when they just have no experience there? Man, I hate to do this again, but I guess I am going to have to take a second bathroom break. Yeah, pause the video again. Pause recording. Sorry. Okay, I'm back again. Sorry about that. That does bring about an interesting point, certainly, as to the way YouTube is set up. The right move, really, would be to always make a small recording before you go live. Make a small recording, test it, make sure all the audio is working. At the very least, make sure all the audio is working before you hit the go live button. And all of those are just extra steps. Like, it's really militaristic almost in the procedures you probably should be doing to make sure you are going to go live and be ready, versus the number of steps that somebody actually wants to spend. They just want to hit the go live button and go. But inherently for YouTube, the notification goes out for that first video, so if you have to stop it or reset, you don't have a new notification for at least an hour that would go out at most, and you're getting 0 views more than likely on that first video, and you can't delete the video to undo that. So then the algorithm is going, well, he got 0 views on the last live stream, so why would I recommend the new live stream? Yep. There's no grace period or way to beg the algorithm not to consider a video when a mistake happens. So yeah, it's unforgiving to say the least. Anyways, getting back to the video game news. Yeah, as I was saying before, I just question why Disney would want to own a video game company. On more thought, I guess they do technically own NBC Universal. I mean, no, they don't own NBC Universal. Disney owns ESPN. So maybe they're thinking that EA in particular, with EA Sports, which is about the only games they make, might have some better negotiating power or may be able to do something more around sports and sports video games because they have ESPN as a negotiating partner. But yeah, if Disney were to acquire EA, they'd be putting a lot of money into EA for maybe not the greatest of reasons. Like, Disney may not have a clue what they want to do really, or they may just want to get money out of Florida and out of running amusement parks in Florida in particular, and so maybe invest into something completely different because of that reason. That might make some sense. And if they did acquire EA, they could certainly sit back and let EA just be a subsidiary and not actually try and interfere with it. That being said, I don't think that is particularly the Disney way. I think Disney constantly wants to interfere with things. I doubt Disney Plus is going to get successful enough that we're anywhere within the next 5 years going to talk about a Disney Plus game streaming service or interconnected Disney Plus service. There are some Disney games certainly that could be remade, or new Disney games that could be made by EA, but EA would be a poor choice really as a company to acquire. So this all just seems like somebody is constantly putting out these rumors that EA is up for purchase, and I don't know if there is really any legitimate thought behind that, or if this is just a cheap way to get attention of people by GameDevelopers.com or Kotaku, Bloomberg, and Jason Schreier, possibly. Of course, I'll have to eat my words if EA does get acquired by somebody, but I would more likely assume EA would continue down their long history of acquiring other people instead of being acquired themselves. Let's see. This is the same story. Psyonix getting rid of in-game item trading from Rocket League to match the Epic policy. They use the word boot here, but it's too easy to misread that as boosts, so it's a poor choice of words. And then Pac-Man Mega Tunnel Battle Royale is coming to PC and consoles. This is an updated version of a former Stadia exclusive game, which would certainly explain why I don't recognize it. There's a real question as far as, can you really play a game from that perspective? That's a Pac-Man game. No, not from a first-person perspective. 64-player battle royale where different playfields are connected, but I don't know if that really does that much other than just give you a way to present way too large of levels. If you clear out a maze, oh, I see, then maybe that eliminates the person that owns that maze. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you not want to eliminate your own maze? If anything, clearing out mazes should get you more points, and then the player with the least amount of points should lose at certain times. Anybody below the top 10, top 20. Maybe it does play that way. Competitive Pac-Man has been a thing a lot longer than you would think, but it was by score competition. Having a 99 version of a game not run by Nintendo and then immediately dismissed by Nintendo is an intriguing twist. Although it's not actually 99 players, it's 64 players, which, you know, honestly 30 players would be 30 versus 1 more than reasonable. Even 4 versus 4 is not terrible. 10 versus 1 is not terrible. Of course, this also could be a game that very few people play, and you would struggle to have 64 players at any time. LEGO has released the first images of the Animal Crossing playsets, which I think we talked about this being rumored a few months ago. From the looks of it, it doesn't feel like too much is really going on here different. It looks just like your standard Lego. These are minifigs, not Lego Friends dolls. I'm not seeing any QR codes. I'm not seeing a Blockheads Mario equivalent. So there's nothing that seems like it's going to make any sounds or anything like that. This is just standard playsets with Animal Crossing characters, which really just highlights that you would need Animal Crossing characters, or a real love of Animal Crossing characters, to justify buying these sets. Because if you don't like the minifigs, there's nothing these buildings are really going to offer you that's that interesting. And inherently, I think they are trying to emulate something that is better in video game form already, because you can decorate the houses and there's just a lot more 3D models and 3D textures than what you could really have in any kind of Lego series of sets. But yeah, I would say if you love Animal Crossing, maybe yes on this, but also it's going to severely depend on your fandom, the price too. Yeah, on top of your fandom. It doesn't feel like there's really a gimmick here. If anything, this is Nintendo letting LEGO just make LEGO sets instead of demanding something different. Yeah, each of these sets, for the most part, seem fairly reasonable in their prices. $15 to $40. $75 seems a little expensive. But yeah, that looks fine. It doesn't seem crazy in any way. There was a article talking about how the Binding of Isaac is adding online play, and it was by GameDeveloper.com, and Binding of Isaac Rebirth is adding online co-op, and so that was the story. That was the story that should have been talked about. But as GameDeveloper.com often does, they put links to other articles at the bottom, and often, almost always, those links in the last two paragraphs are talking about something completely different, and almost always completely irrelevant. And so they were saying that there were some accusations, I believe, against Tyrone Rodriguez here, or Edmund McMillan. Regardless, there was this claim that there was a falling out between Edmund McMillan and Tyrone Rodriguez, and here we see from Tyrone Rodriguez is on Twitter, it's not that much of a falling out, or they've gotten over it if there was a falling out, because they are playing each other online on Twitch. So yeah, and to my understanding, I don't think there really was a falling out, but I'm not 100% sure. It's kind of hard to prove something didn't happen, but I think that there may have just been rumors and not really a falling out. But to my understanding, Edmund McMillan here was working on Mugenics. Yeah, as you can see in his bio down there at the very bottom, working on a game called Mugenics. So he's just after having made so much of the Binding of Isaac content, just trying something different, which he's done that several times, and unfortunately none of his side games have really caught on or succeeded. But yeah, he was just working on a different project that Rodriguez here, who is the executive producer of Binding of Isaac, wasn't working on, was focusing on. In a lot of ways, I think it might be a case that Tyrone Rodriguez runs Nicholas in the same way that Mojang runs Minecraft, whereas the actual creator of Minecraft did the original programming and eventually sold it to Microsoft and gave up on it. And that seems like that is often the case, is you will have the occasional small indie developer make an amazingly good game and then get too much success too early and not really want to deal with it or know how to handle it appropriately, so they end up just selling their game to some company or building a company that takes over control, which at a certain point I definitely understand that idea. Like, most artists want to paint a painting, even if it takes them 5 years or a decade to paint a painting, and then they want to get rid of the painting. They want to sell it. They want to put it in a museum. They don't want to paint the same painting over and over and over again for the rest of their life. All of the art projects that I've had small hands in, and anything creative I've done, really are that way. I want to accomplish the goal or feel like I've accomplished a goal, and once I've accomplished the goal, I feel like I want to move on to the next thing. And that is very much in the brains of humans, that as soon as you get that dopamine release of sense of satisfaction, you want to move on to the next thing. And that is why, in particular, if you want to start a project, it is helpful to not tell people that you're going to do something. Do it in secret and then reveal it after the fact. That will help keep you motivated to doing a project in general, because if people say, oh, that's cool, or that's a cool idea, then you start to get that sense of satisfaction prematurely, and then you have a higher chance of just rage quitting or getting bored and not finishing the project. The final big story I have for today is the UK Developer Union is going to hold an all-hands meeting about layoffs. Game Workers Unite is inviting any and all UK game developers to attend the gathering on Thursday, October 12th, about industry layoffs in the UK region. Which, yeah, it's not super surprising that that's happening, and honestly it should probably be happening more often, because there has been quite a lot of there really has been quite a lot of the layoffs, and unfortunately I don't know what unions can do too much about the layoffs other than potentially capitulate to management and take lower paying positions. But usually when a manager wants to lay off, no amount of capitulation is good enough, and if anything, there's a very good argument that the general standard way of doing business, in which layoffs are fairly consistent and constant, is done intentionally to keep unions weak and to keep employees in general just weak, in such a as they can't ever demand higher wages. And it's important to point out, it's not like game developer management and CEOs aren't getting paid or they aren't taking pay cuts or anything like that. They're taking more and more money out of the system every time they take a paycheck. And that is not just video game management, that's just management and capitalism in general, is that the rich people are constantly taking more and more money out of the system and either putting it into bank accounts somewhere, possibly secret bank accounts, or they are investing it into other companies that then takes a percentage of that money and puts it into the pockets of other rich people. It's a system that effectively could never be stable, could never be safe, because there's always something evaporating from the economy, and the only way to add value or money to an economy would be to just print more money, which causes inflation, or tax money possibly, and use the tax money to somehow benefit lower class and middle class people. Moving on to the regular bits of news, the Steam charts and my macro is still going fairly strong. Notably though, Counter-Strike 2 is now hit the point where it is the worst reviewed Valve game on Steam. They've made a huge mistake, obviously, by changing CSGO to Counter-Strike 2 and then inheriting and cheating to have so many positive reviews that they didn't really earn. Still tons of people playing, but people are not happy, which is funny because otherwise I have heard some positivities around Counter-Strike 2, so maybe there are just a lot of negative people that are trying to shake, or cheaters, or just they're trying to lose their fandom there. Although, wouldn't it have been easier simply at that case to shut down CSGO and release Counter-Strike 2 as its own separate product, or release Counter-Strike 2 and then say we're going to shut down CSGO in a year? I had questioned whether all items would move forward, and it says right here it does. And the general sales pitches of upgraded and overhauled maps, game-changing dynamic stroke grenade, smoke grenades, tick rate independent gameplay, like all of those are probably good things. So mostly I think we will see. Here, let's go with just negative only reviews. People are upset about the bait and switch. Yeah. They're upset about the game being changed names. Here's somebody saying that Counter-Strike 2 is unfinished. Somebody upset about achievements being gone. Most of these are just meme complaints, but clearly enough people are complaining. Yeah. So it looks like you probably have at least half as many complaints if you had just released Counter-Strike 2 and then left CSGO in legacy mode or something like that, or said you were going to shut it down. Perhaps this is a case where Valve didn't want the problem with Artifact, which, let's see, this is still overall through cheating 88% positive, but let's call it 68% positive in general. But yeah, maybe they were just so afraid of Artifact's reception, which I don't know why you'd be afraid of Artifact's reception. Half-Life Alyx is the most recent game listed here, and it is way better received. Dota Underlords is rated very positively too. The Aperture Desk Job as a demo is rated very positively, and Aperture Hand Lab as a demo is rated very positively. So yeah, unless you were just afraid that Counter-Strike 2 was going to end up with a 49% reception because of Artifact, there's no reason to do that. You can see the peak today was 145 players, and the all-time peak for Artifact was 60,000 players. I imagine that all-time peak is actually from a long time ago too. Yeah. Let's see. Weekday full data. Yeah, so this won't show me anything other than a week, but in the past week we can see Artifact has just not been played particularly well. Here we can see it. So it's just lifetime. There was a huge peak and then a major drop off with Artifact. Of course, part of the problem with Artifact, though, is the way it was released. So really it's just Valve being very bad at releases. For the company that runs Steam, they seem to not pay enough attention to know the right way to release a game. But to release Artifact in one form factor and do it in kind of a beta, and then to drastically change how Artifact works when it was out of its beta was a real problem. And see, you can see that they never really resolved that, in that there's an Artifact Classic and an Artifact Foundry version here. But if anything, that highlights that Valve is getting worse, not better, because there isn't a CSGO Classic and Counter-Strike 2 version here. And yeah, they did get rid of all the achievements, which that's gonna piss off some people, certainly. So yeah, Valve doesn't know what it's doing, which that's not good news per se, as far as it doesn't give you more hope in the longevity of Valve as a company. And last thing any gamer wants is Steam to shut down or have trouble. So on our chart here, seeing a lot of things go hand in hand, but a pretty large drop, although it does seem like it's up and down. It seems like it is a very linear experience for Baldur's Gate 3, in that it goes up, and then some days it goes down, and then there's a peak of interest, and it goes down, then there's a peak of interest. If anything, it highlights that most gamers can only play Baldur's Gate 3 for one day, then they need at least 2 more days of rest before they get back to it. So it might be a very overwhelming game, whereas most of these other games don't have those big peaks and valleys. Arguably, maybe Cyberpunk 2077 has a similar experience, and it does look like you're seeing a sharper decline in this Cyberpunk 2077 resurgence. And then Rust came up and down, and Team Fortress 2 came back, which the increase of people playing Team Fortress 2 may very well be directly in contrast to Counter-Strike 2 and CSGO. It may very well be that there is a small percentage of players that are upset with tick-independent gameplay and the way it feels in the hand to play Counter-Strike 2, and that Team Fortress 2 may feel more like what people are expecting. as far as just reaction shots and how the bullets actually fly. But that's a real case where reviewers would be better if they could enunciate that and not just say the game is crap without giving any details as to why or what the explanation is. Interesting, Overwatch 2 algorithmically is being promoted, which you would think now would be the time to keep your eyes open and see if Valve and Steam are going to put their thumbs on the scale and promote Counter-Strike 2, which they certainly could do that. They could have a whole sale around it. They could sneak it in on any list on this front page. New and trending. You could easily say Counter-Strike 2 is trending. But noticeably, doesn't seem like they really are doing it. In fact, I don't think I would see Counter-Strike 2 listed if I scrolled down this infinite scroll for 30 minutes. Just because I don't play those types of games, so I don't think the algorithm would ever decide to suggest that to me. Now, I would say Valve is probably better than YouTube's algorithm in that case, in that it won't just get desperate and start recommending absolute random things to you just because they might be things that are popular to other people. There is a real justification for the game to recommend Destiny to me, or Rainbow Six Siege, even though I've not really played that many games that are like that. Whereas YouTube will eventually get desperate enough that it's just giving you makeup tutorials regardless of whether or not you care one bit about makeup tutorials, to pick a random thing. Yep. I don't think I'd ever see Counter-Strike 2 on the front page. It may be a case that they also don't really want it on the front page because of the negative reception there. They may just be launching it and trying to be somewhat quiet about it in the hopes that eventually the reviews will get better and people will forget about the whole renaming debacle. Everything is reloading today because I reloaded my computer, and when I rebooted my computer it loads everything in Firefox from a cache server, which then just causes the tabs to reload when you actually click on them. There might be a setting to change that, but I would have to investigate that. There's actually not that many settings in Firefox to change without having to get into internal advanced settings. I heard there was some controversy around Firefox too, and I didn't really understand what it was. See, Pac-Man 99 has now been shut down and delisted from the Nintendo Switch Online, which, yeah, seems kind of crazy to have two very similar games, and this gives you a great example of Nintendo's care around a multiplayer Pac-Man game versus the Stadium version. It can have 64 players. And is coming to PC, and once it's on PC, I assume would never really shut down. We talked about the Lego Animal Crossing playsets. Pac-Man Mega Tunnel Battle Royale is the other game. And this is Bandai Namco, and so Bandai Namco doesn't really have a good reason why they wouldn't want to support the game for a long time. Sony is launching a Modern Warfare 3 PlayStation 5 console bundle, which I don't know how many people actually would be buying a PlayStation 5 in Modern Warfare 3 at this point. I don't think Modern Warfare 3 is that new. It does definitely speak to who the target audience is, though, of PlayStation players. It is Modern Warfare players. Sony revealed new smaller PS5 models with attachable disk drives, we already talked about. Weirdly, they're not touching on the accessibility controller, nor are they really announcing any new games. Let's see. The new PlayStation 5 requires a $30 add-on to stand upright, which that seems like that's the exact opposite. I thought it was coming with the stand. Wow, I misread this. The new vertical stand is sold separately for $30. So the price is going up for the PlayStation 5. And you have to buy a stand. What a ripoff. And honestly, it's not even a good move to buy the thinner one because there's a higher chance that the thinner one will break on you. It'd make a lot more sense to buy the old model still. Sony is also raising the PlayStation 5 peripheral prices in Japan, including DualSense controllers, the Pulse headset, and more. Well, I guess this is the new move, certainly, and this might be the direct reason why Jim Ryan quit. The second he's announced his retirement, announced he's leaving PlayStation, it looks like somebody else, I would assume somebody in the Japanese offices, has made and announced changes as far as prices and raising everything. This Japanese PlayStation blog will be in Japanese wallet, and I bet it's not particularly got anybody's name attached to it. But as far as a figurehead. But yeah, seems like there's not a lot of hope at this point that somebody new is going to come in and do something amazing for gamers with the PlayStation Sony Interactive Entertainment division. It seems like they're just going to raise the prices and try to gouge their existing player base as much as possible. Meanwhile, still no new games really being announced. Disney's boss is reportedly being urged to consider acquiring a big game publisher like EA. Bob Iger's deputies are said to be keen on the idea of transforming Disney into a gaming powerhouse. Again, I like my opinion now. I just don't think Disney really would do that. And honestly, if anybody under Bob Iger was intelligent enough to make a good decision, they would be in charge of Disney instead of Disney having to bring back Bob Iger after the previous guy to replace Bob Iger's original reign failed miserably. So I would not put any faith in his deputies, who are probably just idiots or yes men, if I was to guess. It definitely might be a case that since there are a lot of Star Wars games out there, owning your own game company to make Star Wars games makes a little bit of sense. But I just don't think Disney wants to be in that business or knows how to be in that business. If anything, Disney would be spending the same amount of money it would take to make a video game and investing that in developing more movies or Disney Plus TV content. Yeah. PS5 prices are also going up in Japan, and the digital edition is getting a $50 price increase. See, and this is Video Games Chronicles with both of these stories, and both of these stories are contradicting. A horizontal stand will be included with the new PS5 model, the new vertical stand vertical compatible stand with all PS5 models will also be sold separately for $29.99, whereas the article before this said it didn't come with the stand and you would have to buy it separately. So Video Games Chronicles is confused, and they've left up two articles that are contradicting each other, which is another great example why mainstream video game journalists suck so bad, is that they don't even know what they're talking about once they push publish on an article, or they don't know what they're talking about in general and will put out what obviously has to be inaccurate information. And that just leaves me confused as to whether you get the stand or you don't. It'd make a lot more sense that you would get the stand. Activision CEO hints that Guitar Hero may return. Again, I already talked about that. I question, particularly in a post-COVID world, if a bunch of people would come to people's houses and have guitar rock band parties. They may not, but things are just kind of expensive to have parties in general. I question whether kids would do it in particular. I guess maybe adults would still do it. I wouldn't be surprised if new generations look at Rock Band and say, oh, that's just like a baby's toy. I also wanted to mention I redid all the titles at the top here, so you'll be seeing those going through. What I did is I took a 32 pixel point 32 size font in Windows, and I assumed those were pixels, and then I divided 32 from 1080p wide to 1080 pixels. That gave me about 33 characters per one banner. And so what I did there is I did a character count online to tell me how many characters had already been used for each banner, and then I took the remaining pixels and added spaces on the left and right. It was all a very manual thing, but do it once and it will be fine. So hopefully, long story short, the text at the top where it says News Video Games Chronicles, https www.videogameschronicle.com, reads a little bit better and is a little bit closer to the size of the text scrolling at the top above it. And hopefully when it changes to Gematsu and GameDeveloper.com and the Steam follow list, all of those will be more centered and look better. So that's yet another thing I worked on, which, if anything, that highlights some of these projects. If it only takes me 5 or 10 minutes, I'll do it and then I'll forget I've done it. The first Sonic Superstars reviews has been published, and Famitsu's verdict is a positive one, which, okay. 32 out of 40 from Famitsu. That's average, that's good. It's not terrible, it's not great though. Seen plenty of other 32 out of 40 games. But for a Sonic game to be good, or even average, is probably a step up since there's so many bad Sonic games. Then we already talked about fans being angry at Rocket League. Nintendo put out a short Super Mario Bros. Wonder cartoon showing Bowser reacting to Elephant Peach. The villain's response may not be what you expect. What would I expect there? Yeah. I would expect he's probably excited by it. Because that would be the general idea of trying to build hype and excitement around Super Mario Wonders. Yeah. So Bowser offers her one flower, then looks her up and down after she turns into an elephant, and then offers her a whole bunch of flowers, which Bowser being a giant turtle, being excited by a big fat elephant, Princess Peach, it's not super surprising. I mean, this is not Family Guy by any means. You really shouldn't be expecting Bowser seeing Princess Peach being turned into an elephant and then Bowser vomiting or crying or something. Or something crazy like that. And then for our last Video Games Chronicle article, a new Switch system update we already talked about. That brings us to Gamatsu if it wants to load. And yeah, on Gamatsu, it still feels like the text may be a little bit different, but it seems fine as far as the banner. Let's see what new games we have. Murder Mystery Paradox, I think we had already talked about, launching December 2nd in Japan, or Japanese only. It's on Steam, so you can get it, it's just Japanese only. The Thaumaturge launches December 5th for PC and early 2024 for PS5 and Xbox Series. That was just hearing that word was difficult, let alone saying it. You can see it's already on the fall list. I didn't do any research to see if I could make new tabs open on the left instead of the right. Alien Hominid Invasion and Alien Hominid HD launched November 1st. It's a bundle available for $24.99. Which it seems like to me it's not bundled per se. Then on Steam, seems like it's separate games on Steam. Sushi Bin launches October 19th for the Quest and then later for the PSVR 2, PC VR, and Vive. That's Sushi Bin, all about some kind of adventure VR game. Seems almost like a lot of talking going on. Fishing game, dungeon crawler, collection of minigame actions, it looks like. There's a real question, as much as the anime style or anime inspired style it goes well with video games, I don't know if it really goes that well with VR games. And once you start to get into real 3D modeling and trying to have 3D models that have an anime color palette, it stops really feeling like an anime style as much as it feels like some bad animator trying to rip off a style. Persona 3 Reload has the Yukari Takiba trailer if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. King of Fighters 15 DLC character Hinako Shijo is available to check out. A romance visual novel called Amaro Chocolata is coming to the Switch in 2024. It includes English language support, so it may be importable. It is already on Steam and overwhelmingly positive, so that's an example of something to make a short on, even though it's been out since 2020, in that it is, by a very loose definition, trending because it's getting a Switch release, which The word trending is the wrong word to use there. I need to find something else to use. Hollow Cocoon launches December 7th, which, if I recall correctly, this is this game. Yep. The weird visuals and weird creature lady. UFO Robot Grindizer, The Feast of Wolves, has a gameplay trailer, and I'm like, today's been a bad day for me, in particular. There's no getting around it. 2 bathroom breaks already, a lot of stumbling. I possibly should have just waited an extra hour before starting streaming, trying to wake up a little bit more. Spin Rhythm XD for the Switch launches October 26th alongside its first DLC pack. It is, let's see, something that's already on the fall list, so I'm going to assume I already made a short around it. Lords of the Fallen launch trailer and screenshots are available. It may also be a case today that we just don't have that much news, and that may just be the way it goes for the rest of the year. And without news to talk about, theoretically the streams should get shorter, but in practical it may just be that I end up talking more about less important things. Kona 2 Brume launches October 18th. But we don't have a Steam link for it. Pure Molcar Let's Molcar Party is coming to the West on November 21st, which is this some kind of cartoon that's popular, or is this just a case of it coming to the West for not really a good reason? Yeah, I would assume, in the fact that they are talking about it coming with French, Italian, German, Spanish, and Dutch language options, that this is some kind of European-based cartoon that maybe is just not that popular in the United States, or maybe I just haven't seen it personally. There's a good chance of that. Yep. Nothing particularly interesting around the Slim models visually, looking at the screenshots, which is about all I'm doing. So in part that's why I was fairly surprised when I read that the disk drive also came with a SD card, or an NVMe card. Let's see. One of the things I wanted to see if I could find during Amazon Prime Day, and I didn't really find, is a very large, like 4 terabyte NVMe that is just fairly slow. Something that would be in that form factor, but would actually just be designed for mostly storage. Of course, too slow may still be too slow, so if I could find something that probably would be an eMMC through an M2 key slot connector, not an NVMe, it might be so incredibly slow that if I was to put it into a Steam Deck and fill it with a bunch of ROMs for old games, that the speed may be too slow to load in the games even then. And as soon as you try to play a Nintendo 64 game that's even a couple hundred megabytes, you're getting an extra 2-3 seconds to load into each game, and that's not helpful for old games. Old games in particular, you want them to be as snappy as possible, be able to drop in and drop out. Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash launches February 1st in Japan and then February 2nd worldwide. This Jujutsu Kaisen game still feels weirdly connected to some kind of anime series I've never heard of or seen, so it just doesn't feel like it's as popular as it probably should be. Let's see. Tales of Arise expansion Beyond the Dawn quest introduction trailer is available if you want to look at that on Komatsu. And then Frog Detective The Entire Mystery launches October 26th for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox One series and Switch. The number 2 best detective is on the case across 3 mysteries. So this is more of a bundle of 3 different games that you can find and play. Which I'm gonna save that and see if I can look up the Frog Detective games on Steam and see how well they're received and if they're on my wish list. But I'll do that after I finish streaming. There's no reason to do it live. Famitsu review scores for issue 1819 have been issued, giving Drift CE 28 out of 40, Passepartout 2 The Last Artist 30 out of 40, Payday 3 30 out of 40, and then Sonic Superstars, we already saw, 32 out of 40. Game takes about 24 hours to clear and over 31 with side activities. Getting 8s across the board from Famitsu is fairly decent as far as the score goes. And so that's going to bring us to the GameDeveloper.com articles. Let's see. And most of these, again, are just old news. Which, yeah, I guess it's better for my macro to open old news articles and talk about old news articles again than for my macro to fail completely and just not open any articles. Because there is some small value, I'd imagine, to talking about Lord of the Rings Golem developers describing alleged hostile war culture. I don't know if you really, as a gamer, want to or should go into the details. The headline is probably as good as you need to know. Is that a former employee, possibly a disgruntled employee, is claiming a hostile war culture? It's very believable that it probably was a hostile war culture, because most jobs, or a lot of jobs, let's not say most, are hostile environments. But what is a gamer supposed to do about it? Are we supposed to boycott every single video game company that gets an allegation against it? Or are we too busy with our own lives, who often working in hostile environments ourselves, and do we need that emotional break by playing video games more? So if you are a game developer working in a hostile work culture, maybe your sacrifice is appreciated, duly noted, but we can't do anything about it. Like, make a video game company that's run by a union that doesn't have a management, and then you'll have a case where you have a video game company where there can't be as much of a hostile work culture. And then if that company succeeds and makes good games, gamers would be more than willing to play it. In fact, it makes a lot of sense for there to be like union-owned, union-run video game companies in existence, and it just has yet to happen. It may happen in the future, though. The delay is real. Humble Bundle sunsetting the games collection perk in November. UK developer having a whole all hands on meeting about layoffs. John Riccatello leaving Unity. Basically everybody's leaving everything. It'd be really funny if it's just everybody leaves and then everybody gets hired at a different company instead. That would be very funny. Ubisoft has delayed X-Defiant indefinitely to address game inconsistencies, which, if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if X-Defiant was actually just a announcement or a fake announcement to compete with the Sega game that got canceled, which I can't even remember the name of the game, and it was canceled a week ago. I want to say the game was called Monkeys, but that wasn't it. But yeah, if anything, one can hope, I doubt it's the truth, that this might be the end or the beginning of the end of the flood of games as services and multiplayer games where they were designed to just be played over and over again for loot box reasons or for just wasting the player's time way too much. I always want to see video games respect the player's time a lot more than they have in the past, and so some improvements around that would be appreciated. Sony and its new detachable disk drive we talked about, and then Rocket League we talked about, and then Disney we talked about. I could be totally wrong about the Disney story too. Like, I could totally have egg on my face a week from now when they announced that they actually did acquire somebody, although I'm not sure they'd really want to acquire anybody before the end of the year. If anything, it would make more sense for them to do it after the year, calendar year, and after their fiscal year, whenever that is. Usually that's somewhere January, February, March, somewhere around March, I'd imagine. And then I would have a Steam follow list cleanup, but it broke again, and weirdly, my macro, I rewrote that so it would just hit reload, 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 and that doesn't do anything. When the follow list is broken, the follow list is just broken for like an hour. It's a problem with Steam. It's not a problem with my macro. So when it works, all the games will show up, but if it's not working, it just won't. Unless there's a way to reload a page in particular, with like a shift reload button to clear the cache, maybe that would work, but I don't know how to make a macro particularly do that. I may never be able to really fix this problem, and it's not a big enough problem to really worry about. Anyways, I've got tons and tons of games on the follow list, but I don't have so many games on the follow list that it's too much, nor do I have too few that it's too few. So I can just easily miss a few days. I could miss one day every week probably and still be fine. So then that is going to bring us to all the new games on Steam. Yep. So we'll just start to go through all of these and see which ones possibly have a problem. Whoops. You should be hearing music when the blur is enabled, and I'm not, but I think I can fix that live, so let me do that. Do that, and do that. There we go. And only I should be hearing that anyways, so it shouldn't be a big deal. The blur audio is just a way of me knowing that the blur is on without having to look to the left of and see if the preview screen is blurred or not. Trying to prevent accidentally doing something like this and then it being blurred. and me not realizing it. This counter ops blackout assault looks like nothing. Here we have a mostly negative game called Ejected Rydo Rivals. The idea of being ejected or having a driver and then wind sailing via the car, not the worst idea, but the problem with it almost certainly is that you have to get good at programming both a racing game and a flying game, and that's just doubling your work, and obviously two fairly poor results here. Let's see, wild card football. Could be something as far as a silly football game. Or could be nothing. I'll give it a chance. Samurai Beat, I assume, is a rhythm VR game. I'll give that a chance. Hacking and slashing through bamboo. Dead Humanity. Looks like it's just an asset flip horror game, so no to that. Chronicles of Ballotage. Doesn't look like much of anything. Now, inherently, I feel like my macro's not working perfectly here. I lost my track of thought, didn't I? Let's see. This game, Lightbearer, doesn't look like anything. Horses.io doesn't look like anything. It's an interesting idea to potentially make a agro.io clone but have horses in it, but I'm not sure that that really is what this game is. If anything, this almost certainly is just an asset flip garbage horse game. Yeah, something about the macro. It's resetting. Harvest Island. I'll give it a chance. Yep. Oh, what I was going to say is that inherently, by having each of these pages reload every time I click on it, it's adding an extra second to every game I look at, which is going to add up very quickly. This game Geist sucks because there's another game, Geist, that isn't, I think, on Steam. It's a little bit better, whereas this is just a first-person shooter garbage game. I'm not even going to bother to call it an asset flip. It might be that it's all original visuals. It still doesn't look good. Let's see. I believe in Capybara Supremacy. It's probably a joke game. Yeah, I'm gonna say no to this. Install Fee Tycoon probably highlights how slow you would have to be to make a parody joke game around the Unity mess that weeks later, after it's already been for the most part resolved, somebody makes a garbage game. Next we have a game called Love Connect, which I feel like this game was already released on Steam. Maybe it was released on early access. Weirdly, it's not in the adult section when I would argue it probably should be. It's $1.39, claims to support 14 languages, and it doesn't have any mature content description at all. That being said, one of the screenshots has two Asian characters in their underwear sitting at a school desk. Then one has two characters. It almost feels like it's the same character twice sometimes in the screenshots. Two characters showing their behind. And then it looks like it's a match 3 game. Then one screenshot is definitely topless, showing at least one boob. Another screenshot's showing most of one boob, almost all. It's tagged with nudity and sexual content, and yet it has no mature content warning at all. So let's just flag it while we're here. Here we have, let's show this. What can you flag a video game for on Steam? I don't know if I've ever done that before. Child exploitation at the top is really a highlight of where Valve's mind is, although it's fairly difficult to have a video game that exploits a child in any way. Like, that you could have a live action video with a child being exploited on it, or a child being an actor in it and thus being exploited by some people's definition. You could have a kid targeting children with in-app purchases and DLC or expensive things like that, or gambling. But that's pretty much it. And that's not what really Valve is probably looking for. They're looking for the moe anime art style, in which you have an adult game where an anime 2D character looks like a child. Then fraud is the second biggest thing they're interested in, when fraud should obviously be the first thing. It's not like this is alphabetical. And then there's adult content. Then there's, they're least concerned that it's got a virus or malware on it. Then there is broken, it doesn't work. And then there's legal violations, which they don't want to deal with that, because almost certainly there's Islamic law preventing almost every game to be to depict people, women, in outside of hijabs and things like that. Then defamatory. Of course, if you're going to do a DMCA copyright form, click here. And if you're going to do a trademark complaint, click here. They're going to take that way more carefully, since there's real laws around that where they could easily ignore the rest of these complaints. So if I just click adult content and report, that's how it goes. It's pretty easy there. And normally I wouldn't bother to report a game, but blatant ones that are going to not have mature content warnings, or be select themselves into the adult section, or allow themselves to be in the adult section, should not be allowed. Inherently, since censorship is going to go on whether I like it or not on Valve, the next step to work within a censored system is to have the censorship at least make sense and be good. No more should we see on Valve games that are showing a lot of cleavage or showing nudity but aren't labeled appropriately and aren't in the adult section. This Midnight King looks terrible. Yeah. Costly Adventure here doesn't look very good either. Multiverser doesn't look good either. Of course, now the problem is, now that I've flagged one, why not just get the ball rolling and flag them all? Like, every time I see an RPG Maker game that has a character in a decent level of undress, maybe I should just flag that too. I don't think so, though. I don't think I would waste my energy on that. And at a certain level, if it's not completely flagrant, then letting a few people skirt the spirit of the law is probably fine by me. Better to have that and then create a situation where they start to just heavily censor all RPG Maker games, or all games in general. long gone days. Must have come out of early access. It's on the follow list already. I feel like this one I'm going to make a YouTube short on. It's being received very positively. It deserves to be put on the wish list. And yeah, I think that's what's going to happen more often here, is we are going to have games that maybe came out before I started making YouTube shorts, now getting received well. And as we enter the end of the year, I'm going to say no to Little Mages. Inherently, I guess, if I did start opening new tabs on the left side, I guess that wouldn't really change too much as far as working with this long list of Steam games. I guess this is part point and click, part several puzzle game, adventure game. I don't think I'd say yes to this, but yeah, I'll make a short on it. Here we have a game called Unveiled. I question whether there's anything here, but we'll give it a chance. Tonight I die in my sleep, walking simulator. No, I don't think that's visually polished enough. There's kind of a high bar of making a walking simulator that it's going to have to look very good. And even then, it's still going to suffer from being a walking simulator. Let's see. It would kind of help if Valve said, we're not going to stop you from listing walking simulators, but you should really stop making walking simulators, in our opinion. Or come out with a reception as far as some surveys to show that people aren't buying walking simulators and people don't like walking simulators. Surveys in general are weirdly missing in Valve. It's like, it is strange that when you exit out of a game and stop playing it, you never get a pop-up to say, do you want to rate this? Do you want to review this? They don't try to accumulate reviews on the store pages. So you could get bigger numbers and bigger bits of information. I guess in the library it may actually ask you to review a game in a little box on the Steam client, but I imagine most people, including myself, just overlook that box and don't even read what it's saying. Alright, we have an adult game here in the adult section called Animalia. Animalia. Now weirdly, it's 2D, I'd say pencil sketched, colored pencil drawn, anthropomorphic animals, not furries or cat girls or anything like that. I'm seeing a deer and a bunny and a fox, and they all look much more like animals than humans. And weirdly, they don't have even nipples or genitalia, so it's kind of weird that it's even in the adult section, because you're just not getting to the meat of the matter, for lack of a better term. Yeah, in fact, this is an example of where I'd like to flag this game and say this shouldn't actually be in the adult section, depending on what the adult section is that you just have these characters, but there's just drawings. I mean, there's no nipples, there's no genitalia, there's nothing, and it confirms that a romance sim, there's a sexual scene for every character. You can romance, but it's a skippable. These are descriptions of the act, no visuals of any kind. So I just kind of question whether any words should really be censored. Also, it says it's only half done at 3 out of 7 romance options, and it's not being sold as early access. But yeah, if you were to click on this, notice how all of a sudden this has been shifted around. I wonder if this is straight up just randomized for different games. But they've got broken games at the top, and then child exploitation, then legal violations, whereas harmful, fraud, and defamatory and adult content yeah. And even the description here I think is different for adult content. But there's no way to report a game and say, wait a minute, this shouldn't be in the adults only section, which is probably for the better, because that would probably be a case where it wouldn't be very helpful feedback if you had a bunch of people saying it shouldn't be in the adult section when it should, just as a troll or a joke, whereas that's where it's most likely to happen. But personally, I would say, yeah, sticking stones can break your bones, and maybe images can burn your eyes, but words, descriptions, if descriptions are inherently supposed to be censored too and adults only, then what I'm doing right now as far as verbally giving news and describing new games that are in the adult section would also be censored, and maybe YouTube will at some point decide that that is the case, and that they don't want frank explanations of adult games on their platform. But I don't think it crosses the line. In fact, I think it's actually very unhealthy and unsafe to not have words exist and be understood by people at a certain age appropriate level, because if a child in particular is being molested and they don't know the right words to say, and they go, oh, this man loves to tickle me, well, it's fairly easy for a parent to go, that's a weird thing, but nothing to really be concerned about. Whereas if the same child goes, this man loves to tickle me in my genitalia or on my breasts, then there's the red flag. So you need to be able to describe what's happening to you at a certain appropriate level, and describe if you're injured or sore or have some illness. And so there's a certain level of knowledge kids should have, and at a certain level, as far as video games are concerned, you should be able as a parent to tell them you can't play that game because it's got a bunch of breasts or topless ladies in it, and that wouldn't be appropriate for you to see. And so yeah, that's where video games would come into it, or it has a bunch of sex in it, or it has a bunch of genitalia in it, things like that, or it has extreme fetishes like anthropomorphic animals or bondage or sadism, masochism, things like that. Which, yeah, we have yet another adult game here called Workplace Fantasy. This is 2D, kind of colorful, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Western animator. Looks like it's a bit of an RPG game, although I wouldn't inherently say it's an RPG Maker game. It's early access for $12.74, and yeah, none of the screenshots are really inappropriate, so let's just go through it and show it here. You have a lot of kind of the same hairstyle characters and large amounts of cleavage. It's kind of boring. This is why you see in anime you have a bunch of wild hairstyles and different colors. It's just easier to differentiate the characters. this way. This lady here is supposed to be 20 years old, but that's an odd outfit to say the least. The giant cleavage, but yeah, boring brown hair, same time, same brown eyes time. Even if these were supposed to be like identical septuplets or something, you would probably do better to have hair color changes. It's an English, Chinese, and Japanese game, so I just suspect it might be a Chinese game for its kind of lack of commitment. And then when we look up here in the actual game, it looks like it's just a RPG game, like with some conversation happening. Looks like it might be a fishing mini game. But weirdly, none of the adult content is being shown, which that does not really jive with all the other adult games that do show adult content. They're saying mild nudity and sexual suggestive content, which again implies that this probably is closer to an M for mature, not an AO adults only rating if you were going to rate it, which maybe at that point it shouldn't be in the adult section. Although maybe it should. Maybe we should just expand the adult section to include mild nudity and suggestive content, and then what you eventually would have to do if you're going to be fair, not that Valve really cares to be fair, would be to put things with mild nudity and sexually suggestive content from AAA developers and publishers behind the adult content, adult only section too. Which suggestive content is a bit of a question mark in my mind too, because does that mean you can make no jokes, one sex joke? Can you hit on one girl, or do you have to hit on multiple girls? Like, where's the line, where's the limit? How many F words can you use, like, before you get a R for before your movie gets rated R? Is, at least we know in that case, PG-13 movies can get one F word, and so they've made that one specific rule. And I'm sure that the MPAA hates that they were pinned down to one specific rule, which maybe that's not even really a rule, but it seems like it's a rule. Let's see. And yeah, we're still having a problem here where there's just a lot of garbage. I could see why you would make a garbage game like this right now if you knew Rocket League was getting rid of the skin trading between players and players, but I bet this person didn't know that and just got lucky to make a terrible Rocket League clone. And even at that, it's such a terrible clone. Nobody's going to move over to Carball 360 in favor of leaving Rocket League. People would just stop playing Rocket League. But yeah, boy do I wish there were better games. Fireworks XR looks like a Chinese garbage VR game. Order from Chaos looks like an RPG game. Yeah, I don't think it's quite good enough. Dark Cravings. In fairness though, I could easily be overlooking several good RPG games because they just look too much like other RPG games. Seems like this is a collection of mini games that are horror mini games. Never really a fan when I see games like this, but I'm gonna give this a chance anyways. Like, I'm never really a fan when they take several what feel like game jam mini games, vertical slices, whatever you want to call them, demos, and cram them all together and try to sell them. Although in all fairness, selling something for $1.79 is not that expensive of an investment. Noticeably, I haven't seen a lot of 69-cent games lately. Roll me home. It almost looks good enough for me to want to play it. I'm gonna give this a chance. Be really generous with it. Fallen Ninja doesn't look good enough. Combat Zone. And you have a ton of screenshots showing menus and no screenshots showing gameplay. That tells me it's probably not that good. So I'm gonna say no. Layer of Goblins as an action roguelike. Just because of the thumbnail, I'm gonna say no. Here we have another adult game called Lust Hostel, which is the 3D CGI characters once again, with a 3D hotel or room as the background. I suspect some of these 3D rooms may literally be generated by like architecture software, room design software. Yeah, it wouldn't be surprising if that's exactly what's happening, is that you can take a easy to use room decorating software to make a room, and then once you've made the room, why not throw some fairly disconnected, visually inconsistent 3D models around here. One thing I guess to point out here is you have a fairly dark-skinned African lady of African descent on top of a probably 2 white and 2 pink-haired lady. But for the most part, the screenshots don't look that interesting. There is nudity in these screenshots, so we're still not to a point where I would think all screenshots have to be censored. But then there also are a lot of screenshots that are just rooms, empty rooms. The game is early access for $15.99 and it claims to have English full audio. I would question that severely. It almost feels like there might be a voyeurism photography element to it, but I would question if that's really what you're doing here. Well, I guess that does give me an interesting idea, though. There is a non-adult game called Double Switch that came out a long time ago, and a big part of that is kind of voyeurism, and that you switch between cameras. It is basically the spiritual successor to Night Trap. So maybe I could have a in which I could cover Double Switch, which I want to do fairly eventually. I'm not going to say fairly soon, since I'm so slow at making content and releasing content. But yeah, playing a game that I know is safe for work to show and talking about the general idea of voyeurism could be interesting. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of adult games that are actually voyeuristic in nature in the first place, so there really is a bridge, but it would be a bridge to nowhere, because yeah, there is a shockingly low amount of games that involve cameras, video cameras, or voyeurism. There is another game around voyeurism that's fairly old. Voyeurism as a fetish, if all parties are consenting, can be fun and legal, but voyeurism as a crime in its purest form is definitely not legal and not encouraged. Robbing someone of their agency and their control over who sees their body and who doesn't is not appropriate when they expect privacy. a certain level you give up a level of expectation of privacy if you're going to a topless beach and you're topless, but even at that, you're generally not expecting somebody to have cameras zooming in on you at a topless beach, unless you're a celebrity, in which you assume people are always putting cameras on you, and then you have less of an expectation of privacy. This game, Don't Fall, is just another one of these platforming games that weirdly has a bunch of Game Boys and other 3D objects. Here we have yet another 3D CGI game, adult game called Heroes of Eroticism, Opportunities of Love, which looks like it's a much larger cast. And yeah, one of the guys is physically much larger than you'd normally expect a guy to be. The 3D CGI models look a little worse than average, I'd say, in the background areas. Again, don't look great. It does feel like a lot of these are just being made with some asset flipped home models for space designing. Opportunities of Love, Heroes of Eroticism, Vice, flip that and reverse it, is $8.99. It's English only. I assume it is just a visual novel. I wonder if there really is much of a difference there between 3D CGI characters with over unrealistic body proportions versus porn stars who won the genetic lottery and have unrealistic body proportions, just being much larger than your average person, average male would be, or women with breasts that are much larger than an average woman's breast size would be. The difference there in my mind is that 3D CGI characters can just continuously get bigger and bigger with no connection to reality, whereas it takes surgery and effort for live action actors to be unrealistically large. Probably doesn't mean too much, but there is certainly a danger in creating unrealistic body standards. I saw a post on Reddit where somebody showed a picture of a tweet saying that the butts in Baby Got Back aren't even that big because now butts have been made even larger through women doing a lot of squats for the most part and different diets. This game, Monolith, isn't really showing me a lot, but it does have a level of polish on it that makes me think that this is probably a decent point and click adventure, or at least it has a chance of being a decent point and click adventure. River City Rivals, River City : Rival Showdown, unfortunately is mostly negative. It was already on the follow list, so we already made a short on. Why are people not happy about it? If you're wondering why this game reviews are mostly negative, too long didn't read. The controls aren't responsive even after trying to disable Steam controller fix I pre-ordered and was massively disappointed. So, controllers don't work, refund. Yeah, people want to play this with a controller and it doesn't work with a controller. I'm questioning if you could even play it with a mouse and keyboard. You probably could play almost any game with a mouse and keyboard, but that doesn't mean you can play it well. Alright, well, I'm going to leave this one on the follow list, not make another short around it, but the hope is that Arc System Works would put out a patch and fix the problem. There has been a real up and down around the River City series, in that they should have taken their time after River City Girls revitalized interest in it and made sure every future River City game was done at a high level of quality like River City Girls, and River City Girls 2 was, and that they aren't just going to try and shovel out remakes or ports of old games without putting a lot of care and attention to it, which River City Showdown, Rival Showdown, definitely feels like it is a spin-off game that they didn't put enough care around. And inherently, I think there is just a desire by Arc System Works to have the Western audience in particular, or a new generation of gamers maybe, be interested in the two male protagonists in River City, when clearly they should have just abandoned all the old characters from the old River City games and focused exclusively on River City Girls, since they had lightning in a bottle with those characters. Maybe it doesn't make sense to a Japanese mind to have girls in a biker gang, or that many girls in a biker gang. It's not that uncommon. There definitely were a lot of biker gang Japanese TV shows and stories back when those were very popular in like the 70s, maybe the 60s even. But yeah, it may very well just be a great example of a Japanese company being set in its ways and not wanting to adjust to where the audience is, and instead trying to force the audience into the narrow, rigid mentality of the game developer company perception. And that just doesn't work. And a good thing it doesn't work. Here we have a game called Gallows Hill, which gallows to me means where you would hang somebody, the stage you would hang people on. I'm not really seeing anything like that. Instead, I'm seeing a pretty blurry, ugly 3D match game with what seems to be a fairly unconnected thumbnail. So I'm gonna say no to that. Red Raptor doesn't look like anything other than a shoot 'em up game. Is there a reason to make a YouTube short around shoot 'em up games? I don't think so. Oh, and by the way, since now I'm putting everything as a premiere, there is a small hope, and I definitely am looking for feedback here, that more people will watch my shorts on an earlier time. But there is definitely also a concern that it's just going to get really overwhelming and annoying to have premieres. I don't know if there's any way to really fix it though, so apologies if you are getting overwhelmed on my channel by YouTube shorts. All I can say is please try to, if you're not going to watch the shorts, which is fine, watch the live streams and the pre-recorded footage. I would very much prefer everybody watch my pre-recorded footage and not watch any of the live streams or the shorts, but I've got to put out all this kind of content to even try to have a small hope of getting the watch time up for YouTube to potentially be in the YouTube partner program at some point in the future to run a few ads, which I really won't have that much control on how many ads get run, but yeah, I'm getting older and older and I'm still not making a dime off of all of this effort, and it's not a good situation to say the least. The hope was that all my old content would be able to gain a few bucks here and there from ad revenue each month, just to get to a livable wage. I'm not trying to get rich here by any means. Mobile Store Simulator looks terrible. And then our last game for today we have is Total War Pharaoh, which is mixed, which we already have on the follow list anyways. So yeah, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a link down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.